I will try to be as loud and clear as possible, says the speaker. I will speak about using ground counts for estimating abundance of the baikal seal population at summer clouds on the Ушканьи Islands. This is endemic and the only representative of the true seals. Population monitoring is impossible without estimating abundance and other parameters of population. It is the least endangered species. There are possible ways to obtain the necessary information is to conduct surveys of baikal seals at summer hollowouts, the largest of which is located on the Ушканьи Islands, as I said, during the summer period near the Tонкий island. The goal of our task is to analyze the dynamics of baikal seal hollout. We also had to count the abundance of seals on Tонкий Island to ascertain certain parameters of seals like sex, age, hair quality, presence or absence of wounds, and check if these different parameters could be used to identify different pathogens and diseases in baikal seals. Since 22nd of July till 18th of August in 2020, we had 63 sites, visual surveys, about 95 hours of continuous monitoring. We also took the northern coast of the island. We separated it into 5 different areas and we counted them separately in each of these specific areas. We selected 11 points to cover the areas in a maximum way, but to avoid overlapping with the adjacent area. We counted 3 times per year or 3 times per day. It took about 90 minutes, depending on the abundance of animals. We wanted to pick the maximum amount, or rather pick the maximum number of animals per day. We noted number of wounded, molted, disease, sick animals, which we used for identification. We tried to analyze and identify sex and age of animals. We also took down the notes about the weather conditions so that we could see the wind strength and maybe cloudy conditions, and we put that into the table. We also used photos of claws to identify the age. We used special photo equipment, and here we can see the number of lines which we used to define the age. The results are as follows. On average, the number of animals on Tонкий Island is 268 individuals, while the maximum amount was cited on 29th of July, 1,209 individuals, and there was no one only on 16th of August. On average, it was 50 plus minus 61 individuals, and maximum, it was several hundreds. When we compare water and islands, or rather water and terrestrial sites, then in water it was significantly fewer compared to islands. Maybe it was harder to count seals in water, or maybe they just move around very fast and we had to come up with some methodology to be sure that we do not count the same animal twice. We analyzed the temporal surveys. We saw that during the day, the abundance doesn't really change during the day, but during the month, it changes closer to the mid-August. At that time, it significantly dropped. Maybe it is connected with poor weather condition during that time. It also could be connected with the fact that animals just moved to other regions of the lake. With increased bad weather of bad weather conditions on the lake, the number of seals decreases. The higher the tide waves, the lower the number is, because seals cannot stay on stones. The share of moated and wounded seals is about 3% of general number of seals, but probably it's not the maximum possible number, because some of the seals could just be hiding their wounded or moated sites from the scientists. We were able to identify age from 13 individuals, and among those 13, we separated them into several age groups. Most of those animals are from 4 to 5 years. These are live animals, and among dead animals, those were mostly from 1 to 5 years. We believe that a lot of dead animals was connected with the fact that those animals die more often because they are too young and they cannot withstand the pressure from the environment and from predators. When we analyzed the identification, we understood that we can use only unique features of animals to identify and separate different animals to their color of their skin, but this is not applicable to baikal seal. That's why we used a different approach on scars, wounds, some disease traces, but despite a rich database of photographs, we are still unable to find a morphological characteristic which could be used to distinguish different baikal seal. During our studies, we were able to make sure that only 21, we found 21 specific individuals, and we did not see them later on. As a conclusion, I would like to say that the abundance varies from 0 to 1,209 individuals. The height of tide waves is the main factor which affects the abundance of seals on the island. There were much more seals on stones compared to water, and the share of non-moated is near 3%. Mainly, this island is inhabited by non-adults or sub-adults, about 4 to 5 years old, and most of the animals sighted were dead animals. It was very hard for us to identify the sex of animals. We were able to identify only 2 males and 2 females. Photo identification is not a very effective method to use on baikal seal, and we were able to use close photos to identify the age of different seals. And I would like to provide some recommendations for further studies on this topic. The main problem when providing visual service is that animals are scared away. We should take this into account when charting a course and when we put these observation points. Sometimes the usual measures are not enough, especially artificial structures where scientists would cover. So it's better to use some natural areas to hide yourselves so that the animals would not be scared away. We have yet still to define a certain morphological characteristic which would be responsible to their physical condition, and we will be sure if the animal is sick or not. And I would like to add that all of these results will be used in my thesis and my diploma work, and also plan to study the changes in temperature and wind strength on other islands of this archipelago and see if these factors affect abundance of seals in this region. This is all I wanted to say thank you for your attention. Thank you, Polina. We have a number of questions. Gleb, please voice the questions. Vladimir Gromov asks, until what day and month you saw molted animals? Answer, it was up until 18th of August. We saw unmolted animals by that date. Anna Losova asks a question. Are there any studies on Baikal seal which demonstrates the increased number of rings on claws, or maybe there's some correlation with teeth, with other ways to identify the age? Answer, I'm not sure. I haven't seen these kind of studies yet, but if there are any, I will be really glad to have a look at them. Unfortunately, I haven't seen these kind of studies, and I will try to look harder and see if there are any before I do my next study. Next question. How this approach is good enough because claws diminish in size with age? Answer, yes. It is possible to use this approach only before seals are 7 years old. After they are 7 years old, it's not very accurate to use this kind of approach because it will be hard to assess if their claws got shorter or not. But we dealt with only younger population. We saw the number of rings. As I said, most of the animals were from 4 to 5 years old. Tomasz Cieselski wants to ask a question. Well, first of all, thank you for your presentation. I have a question regarding tourism. I think the tourism is quite developed there on this island. Did you try to see if tourists scare away the animals? As Polina mentioned, these animals are easy to scare. Did you take into account the tourism? Answer, yes. Tourists and tourism significantly affect these animals. When tourist group arrived, if they were very loud, if the seals saw tourists, then the whole out was deserted in a matter of seconds. But we were not able to verify this data. We can only rely on the words of these locals and other tourists. But I believe there could be a correlation between the number of tourists and number of seconds which it takes for seals to desert the hollout. Yes, I think it would be very interesting to check this kind of correlation. And the final question, Ilya Mishevsky asks, what's the point of taking into account the number of seals in water and on the island? Some of them resting, some of them are feeding. Maybe it's better to calculate the total number of seals during that region. Answer, we took into account these two different areas in water and on the island in order to understand how they prefer to spend their time, specifically on the northern coast of Tonkey Island. We also have the data on abundance. The abundance was from 0 to 1200. 0 was cited when there was very bad weather, high tides, and 1200 when it was very good weather. We found a lot of